May I help you?
We'll be asking the questions, old man. Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
Just answer the damn questions. Who are you?
I have told you.
Are you deaf?
No, you is blind.
I'm not blind, you blind.
That is what I just said.
You just said what?
I did not say what. I said you.
That's what I'm asking you.
And you is answering.
Shut up. You.
Yes?
Not you, him. What's your name?
Me.
Yes, you.
I am me.
He's me. And I'm you.
And I'm about to whoop your old ass, man, because I'm sick of playing games. You, me, everybody's ass around here. Him.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap, episode number 90. I'm one of your hosts tonight, Gus Manty of Suggs Fishing Guide Service, and we're bringing to you some sort of like a preview almost to the Wisconsin Musky Expo, but we're going to get Mike Conklyn on from Conklyn Lures, maker of the Pedigree. He's got a new lure that he's coming out with as well for the Wisconsin Musky Expo, and we're also getting Rich Reinert on. So we're going to kind of do a talk over on what's new this year for the Wisconsin Musky Expo in Wausau and Rothschild area, and kind of go more in depth there. But before I get any further, let's introduce the other co-host here on tonight. It was none other than my brother Max. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Excited to talk some Wisconsin Muskie Expo here this evening. Do you know, Gus, are we going to be doing anything for Muskies on Tap for the show that we've thought about at all? I know we really haven't quite talked about it yet, but it's coming up sooner than we think.
Yep, coming up soon. I know we got a couple plans in our books. I mean, we're going to be right by the Titletown booth. We're going to be right by Huntsy Tales, right with Hammer Custom Lures. So that's where you're going to be able to find us. And we do want to plan on doing some sort of kind of like a podcast with bait makers during the show. Kind of, it might be something we don't have it set planned, but something that might be, going on throughout the show because it's going to be pretty hectic. Lots going on. Myself and Clayton Speece are speaking on Friday. I don't remember what time. I think we're the first time slot. So from opening door to that, speaking engagement that we have, I know it's going to be chaos. So we'll plan on maybe first just tending to the people walking around the show, but kind of on off times, we're probably going to chat with some bait makers. Our podcasting equipment isn't super mobile, so we'll probably have to bring some people to our booth. Probably have maybe some write-in stuff from listeners, possibly. I mean, you guys are going to be walking by, so if you got any questions and we're recording or whatever, by all means, hop on in. So
Maybe get some listeners to hop on the pod. They got a good musky tail or two.
Yep, some musky tails of some big ones, or one that got away, or hook in the hand or something crazy. I don't know. I'm sure there's some wild stories.
We're workshopping.
We're workshopping right now, yeah. And yeah, probably gonna do some sort of, man, I might use the idea we did last year where the first what did I have it at? I think it was like the first person to come to the show and say something. I can't remember what I had them say to the booth gets a free hat.
Ooh,
so I think I'm gonna
nice.
do that again too. But
yeah, now that we have some new merch coming up, some sweatshirts, stickers, and pint glasses, we'll be able to probably drop
t-shirts.
some. Oh yeah, and t-shirts too. We'll probably be able to drop some fun hidden nuggets towards the end of our podcast, starting here pretty soon. So for all those people that stick with us for the ungodly amount of time we somehow record these in, we always appreciate that. So yeah, we'll make sure that your time is definitely not wasted listening all the way through to the end. But yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, Gus, I don't really have all that much here to yap about this evening. We got our boys' ice fishing trip here is coming up in a couple weekends.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I mean, I really have not been doing much fishing. It's been extremely busy with work and life and just everything. So, um, it's been a good productive off season, but hopefully that just means it's setting up for a nice musky season for me, which would be great. So, yeah, without further ado, I think you should just dial up this interview here with Mike and Rich, and we'll catch you guys on the other side.
Yep, sounds good. All right, now here on the line, we got both Mike Conklin and Rich Reinert on. And Mike's the first time guest. Rich, we've had on a few times. But if for those that don't know Mike, he's the maker of the Conklyn Lures, like the Glitch Pedigree. He's got a new one coming out, the Pacifier, if I'm not mistaken. We'll talk a little bit about that. And since you're a first time guest, we'll start with you, Mike. How are you doing tonight? And I like the bait wall in the background.
Thanks. First, I want to say thanks. Thanks for having me on this. It's pretty cool. Honored, I guess. Other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome.
Taking a little relaxation time from building baits for the show.
Good. Appreciate you taking some time from that. Looks like you're a busy man making a lot of baits for the Wisconsin Musky Expo. We're excited to see what you have to offer. You're already putting out show colors, which is really just teasing everybody.
Yep.
Everybody's getting
That's the whole
excited.
point of it. Yeah. Drive it up, right?
Yep. And well, before I dive any further, Rich, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing just wonderful. Just wonderful. I always enjoy talking with you, Gus.
Good.
And Max,
Awesome.
we got you tonight. Where's your other cohort?
Who
I
knows
didn't even
where
dress
he's
it in
out?
the intro.
Yeah, who
Shoot.
knows where he's out in the world right now? But yeah, I'm happy to be here, Rich. You're bringing some energy here before we started recording, so I always appreciate that.
You know what? Not bad for a 60 old man in his 60s, huh?
Not at all. I needed that little cup of coffee there that you brought to the start of the podcast. So we're ready to go now. We're fired up. But yeah, let's start here with Mike, Gus. How about it? I mean, I was lucky enough to get to the Wisconsin Muskie Expo last year, and by the time I arrived, Mike, I think you had about 98% of your inventory sold. So for good reason. I mean, guess just take us back here to the start. I mean, when did you start building these glide baits? Was it kind of the only type of bait that you started with? Just kind of curious to hear like when this bait building thing took off for you.
So it would have been like 2005, 2006. I was living in the southeastern part of the state, fishing a lot of lakes that were very, very weedy, high weeds. And I was just looking for something that I could kind of hit into a pocket, just a bare pocket, and just keep the bait there, but yet moving at the same time. So I actually got pretty lucky and I made the first one and it worked. I mean, it's one of those odd things that never really happen, but it worked. It kind of just became a staple in my boat for certain lakes down there. And then I started using them up in northern Wisconsin and catching fish. So it started out real small, 1-2 baits over the winter, turned into a winter project, make 10, give 8 of them away. It's funny to look back on the different designs, kind of what I started with to kind of what I went to what I went back to the original. And then about, 2020 is when I decided to start making them available to the public. Because I figured, it's about time that other people get to enjoy this too.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, just for contrast for people listening. So you're talking about when it started out, you're just making a handful of these baits. And then last year at the Wisconsin Muskie Expo, how many baits did you make and how many were left by the time the doors shut on Sunday?
Okay. I'm going to say like 235, 240 total baits. And by Rich, what time do the doors open on Saturday? 9?
They opened up at 2:00
On Saturday, though.
Oh, on Saturday morning they were open at 9.
So they opened at 9, and by 9:36, I was completely out.
Yeah, but let's be honest about that. You actually put some baits aside.
I did. I hid some baits because I wanted guys on to have them on Saturday. Yes, I put about half out on Friday, a little more than half, and they were gone within the first part that I had out. They were gone within like an hour, a little over an hour, and then I kind of hung on to some and put some out here and there, which I think, Max, is what you probably ran into, is just a few that I had put right back out. And I mean, guys were just making rounds, and the minute they see them out, they were snagging them up. So it was a great feeling. I don't remember much from that show. It was a whirlwind for sure.
That could be a blur when you're going through that many baits. I mean, it's about that many customers, probably, at least.
And I felt bad. I felt bad because I wanted to talk to people, and I wanted to, I'm getting people coming up to me and saying, "Hey, I've bought your product. I bought it before. I used it. I've caught fish." And I'm like, "Wow, that's cool." And I'm just kidding. It was getting pulled in multiple directions. So while it was awesome and cool, it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was kind of just, it was a whirlwind, and I definitely was not prepared for it. That's for sure.
How many years have you done the Wisconsin Musky Expo? I know you said 2020 you made it.
Well, last year was my first year at the expo. 2020, I made them available just on basically Facebook, and
yeah. And now you're dealing out to a couple shops. If I J&T's in Rhinelander, I think.
J&T's in Rhinelander. My first store when I moved back to Plover here in 2022, where are we at? 21. I went and talked with Taps and Tackle. They're located in Stevens Point.
Oh, yeah.
And we kind of had an arrangement there where I made some for their booth that they had at the expo. They sold one or two, this was just of the original Glitch at the time. And they were like, "Yeah, we know what we're going to do. We know better." Well, then later on that summer, Joseph kind of approached me and says, "Hey, what do you think of, trying something with maybe a blade on the back or something along those lines?" I'm like, "Oh, still can't hurt to try." And I played around with it, and this is the Pedigree was born, I guess, at that point, and it took off. It just took off like crazy. I'm still riding it.
But let's be fair about this, Mike. I met you, the year before, 2 years before, before you actually came to the Wisconsin Musky Expo. And a lot of people, think that guys just make baits and then they just throw them out on the market. One thing about Mike, I can tell you, Gus and Max, he doesn't just throw baits out on the market. I mean, that pacifier that you had mentioned earlier, that's been 2-3 years field testing. And I know because last year, Gus, as well as you had one in your boat, but I really pounded the snot out of that bait. And, so Mike just doesn't throw baits out there. Mike puts, a couple years at least. I mean, I have a good idea. I've seen what he's got planned for the future, and he's not going to throw them out. I know there's a couple baits I'd love to see out that he would make, but some guys are going to get their hands on them. But, he's looking for honest feedback. He doesn't, good, bad, or indifferent, he does not just throw crap on the market like some companies do. And I hate to say that, but unfortunately, everybody wants to be in the musky bait business. And so we're getting a glut of some, baits that I wouldn't use myself. Let's put that.
So, all right. I could ask Mike this, but I know he could probably talk about why his baits are great all day long since he's the one making them. But let me ask you, Rich. I mean,
Well,
People are-
I'll jump in. I'll jump in and tell you sometimes they're not the greatest. I mean, when the fish want, sometimes they just don't want gliders. That's the plain and simple part of it. I mean, I'll throw them all year round just because I use them. I love them. I can make them do different things, but sometimes it's not the answer. So I will be the first to admit that they're not the greatest at all times.
And I can definitely appreciate that. But I, you know, when we're talking about like how quickly, you know, you sold out last year at the Wisconsin Musky Expo and everything, there might be some people that are tuning into this that, you know, maybe aren't super familiar with your product. So I'll ask Rich, you know, as a user of these baits, what do you think makes them, you know, kind of what they are, or, you know, makes them so effective?
Well, let's go back to gliders, okay? I mean, you know, gliders are nothing more than tools. And I think one of the things, I'm glad you asked that, Max. That's a really good question, by the way. But what I notice here, the newer musky fishermen that are coming up, you know, that are coming into the market, I don't know why this is, but everything's fast, fast, fast. You know, throw a bucktail fast, throw a piece of rubber, rip, 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 fast, fast, fast. So what happens is they'll get to a glider. So let's establish, you know, the purpose of a glider. A glider, when I use a glider, you know, the purpose is that I'm fishing for neutral to inactive fish. And, you know, I'm trying to get, you know, a response from that neutral to more so inactive fish. And what Mike's bait does so well, you mentioned before, Gus, Glitch, then the Pedigree. So we'll start with those two baits.
Mm-hmm.
The Glitch is a very slow working glider. So what happens is when people come into the booth and they'll buy a Glitch, then all of a sudden Mike gets a phone call 4 months later, 5 months later, and says, I don't like your bait. I can't make it work. And it's like, I think the biggest problem is fishermen don't understand how to work a glider, because back when years ago, you'd get a package lure and it would tell you what to do. But there's so many baits out there now today, and you're like, so what is this supposed to do? That's the purpose of going to these shows. Take the time, talk to the guy that made the bait. He'll explain it to you. But people want to rush in, grab the bait, and then run out, and then they get out and they work it fast because they think that's the way all gliders should work. I'm going to tell you this, Max, I've learned through the years. All the guys sitting here right now, I was using gliders before most of you were all born, okay? Yeah, Mike, you know, you're old enough, Mike. The thing of it is this. I started using a bait called an Eddie bait that was made by Eddie Osling. And my grandpa used to fish with Eddie. So that was the very first glider I ever used, a true glider. And what has happened is there was an evolution of gliders that came out because guys didn't understand or they were inconsistent. So bait makers tried to make the baits consistent. So what has happened is the guys will go out there, they'll pump on those gliders, and the baits cut to the left, cut to the right, cut to the left, cut to the right. And that's all fine and great. The bait's working, but they don't put anything to it. And by what happens is a bait like that becomes what I call a hypnotizer. And I've seen it time and time again. There's no reason we have to mention any names of baits, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of hypnotizers out there. Now, is a hypnotizer going to catch a fish? Yes, in ideal conditions. Is it going to be consistent in catching fish? No, it's not. Because what the fish will do, and some of the old timers can relate to this, the fish will start coming in on a hypnotizer, and all of a sudden the bait will go left and the fish's head will go left. And then all of a sudden it'll go right and you'll see the fish turn right. Well, pretty soon the fish is going left, right. They're not going to eat it. They're going to leave. Mike's baits are made to work slow, and then slow to medium. The Glitch is a shallow water glider. Gus, you and I ran into a situation, last season where the fish were shallow. The fish were shallow.
Yes, they were.
And you had to put it in their face, and you had to entice those fish to hit. One thing I watched with you, Gus, last year, we went into one spot and you were snapping that Medusa like crazy on that one. Remember that one big fish back in the corner we were fishing,
Mm-hmm.
and the fish ate the Medusa. But when you got back, we changed spots, and all of a sudden you slowed down. You knew to either go fast or slow down. You knew what you had to do. You made a change in your presentation. I watched that of you. A lot of people just do the same stuff. But if you're fishing a shallow water presentation, that's the purpose of a glitch. It works well, shallow. Bluegill spawning, okay? He's got, you take a glitch and you work it real slow, and muskies will come out of nowhere and boom, they're on it. The pedigree runs a little faster, but still, it's a medium retrieve glider. And that's the thing I think some of the younger guys got to get into their head. I'll be honest with you, I don't even use rubber anymore, because anything a piece of rubber can do, I can do with a glider. And I'll be honest with you, when I started using Mike's baits, I started with using a glitch, and then I got into a pedigree, and then I started using Tom's Super Glide, and I used a blunt nose. Every one of those baits are different, but they have one thing in common: slow down. And you're going to move all kinds of fish. And the fish you're going to move are going to usually be some decent fish. And I think that's the biggest thing that you got, that you've got to really incite on these people is they need to slow down. Not all baits are created equal. If Mike's busy selling baits at the show, come back, talk to the man, learn how to use the bait. Same thing with Tom's or Chaos, whatever. But that's the key thing about his baits. They work excellent from a shallow to medium depth presentation, but you got to slow down. And then you'll see. Here's another second key thing, Max. Mike's bait, as well as a couple others in the market, they all have that roll. And I've found through the years, and people can debate this all they want to, but I'm telling you, matter of fact, do you guys know Matt Vavrock?
Yep. Oh yeah.
I don't.
Yeah,
I've never met
ours.
I never met the kid, but I noticed. I saw one of his videos. I watched it. He did a good job on the video, but he was talking about how the baits that were most productive was the ones that roll. And I went, yes, a young guy got it figured out. The baits that roll, and that's what Mike's baits got a lot of. Belly roll. A lot of belly roll.
I think a lot of it is that, so you were talking about the hypnotizer type baits that go left, right. There's no real other movement. And Gus, that video that you and I both posted of you catching that fish on a glitch, if you notice, that fish was left to right, following it, but you gave it that pause. And on that pause, that bait belly rolled and then wobbled down. And that split second is all it took, and that fish nailed it. That's the difference, I think, in a lot of baits, is the little bit of difference in triggering.
You give it that extra little time, because it was
something a little more erratic in there.
Yes, because it was totally going to most likely just keep following to the boat and nip and maybe miss it or whatever. But if you give it that opportunity of just that little extra pause, for sure. And I think
did it right.
The pedigree, I love that the blade still moves in a different fashion, even when it's not moving. And to go off of what you're saying, Rich, about the belly roll or, something that wobbles, baits that do something when they're not moving. I don't know if that makes sense. Like when you're doing nothing, but the bait's still doing something, just like, Medusas or bulldogs, the tail's still spinning really nicely when it's going down, or these glide baits that you get to wobble down when you're doing nothing. Those are the baits that always seem to trigger more fish, especially when they're, these days more negative than active. It seems like,
And that's where, the glitch came from. Was I had a massive thick weed bed, and a 10-foot hole or a 5-foot hole, or even a little 3 to 4 foot hole of no weeds. And I wanted that bait to spend as much time in that small hole. So I made it to run shallow above the weeds, and then to be able to just basically walk it left and right without going too far forward, and let it drop on that belly roll. And that wobble down is all it took. I mean, you put something in front of that fish for long enough, then the typical half second it takes to cover that hole with a bucktail or a topwater, that's what it was. That's what they needed.
You talked about the blade. What would you call is like the hash blade, or what would you call the blade on
It's
the
a
back of
Half
the?
moon.
It's a hatchet blade. It's a hatchet blade. Or actually, so there's
It's a
two
hatchet
technically
blade.
different. Yeah, there's a hatchet, and they have a hatchet and a tomahawk.
Okay.
They're both of them are slightly maybe a different cup to them. The painted ones I have, I think, are tomahawks. The unpainted ones I have are hatchets.
Okay. So I've seen, obviously some other bait builders have emulated this, trailer
Oh,
blade,
I'm
if
not
you
the
will.
first. Yeah, I'm not the
Okay.
first by any means.
Okay, so I was
Nope.
going to ask, so, yeah, well, that kind of helps me on my question is kind of where did that idea come from? Or like, when did you start putting that hatchet blade on the back of that glider? Because that's a cool twist. For me, growing up, gliders were Phantoms and Hellhounds, so it was like kind of the first glider that I actually used with some sort of a, blade attachment to it.
So I had the guys from Taps and Tackle that kind of threw out the idea like, hey, something different. Have you ever thought of put a twister tail in the back, soft tail? I'm like, I do, but there's so many of those out there. That's just, I don't know. I don't like following the norm. And it turned into, hey, here's an idea. What could you put a blade on the back? And I'm like, I never really thought about it, but sure, let's play around. And it completely, I had to revamp my whole layout of how the bait is weighted and everything. So it took me a little bit, and finally, I mean, it was a good thing I had a pond fairly close, and I'd make 4 or 5 blanks, run out there, try it. Nope, they're garbage. Go ahead, do some more, and yeah, a lot of firewood. But when I got it, it just took off from that point. So by no means was I the first. I don't think so.
I can't. You know what? There's been
Rusty kind of came out at the time, but I've got a. I forgot the bait. I have one hanging here, and it's got like a little, like on those, like on a jigging spoon, old time ice fishing spoon with the little blades on the back. It's similar to one of those little blades, just something for extra movement. I get it, but I came up with the idea of the hatchet. I wanted something different. I didn't want a willow blade. I didn't want a Colorado blade. That's where I kind of went with the hatchet blade.
I will tell you something, Max. There's a lot of gliders on the market, and there's some good gliders out there. But I'm going to tell you, at least for where I fish, here in the state of Wisconsin, I find that when I reach for a glider, I probably reach for a pedigree probably 80% of the time. In the spring of the year, I'll reach for for a glitch. And so they're very much a part of my arsenal when I'm fishing. They're an excellent tool, one of the best. I mean, I throw, Tom's Super Glide in the fall time. His 7-inch fish is big, but Mike's 7-inch pedigree is probably I feel it's one of the best gliders I've ever used.
Wow, thanks.
Did that size range, was that what you started with?
Yeah.
It's like, because the glitch was you said the first one you made for forever.
Yep.
Did you make a different size at all, or did it all just, you kind of stuck with
I like that size. That size to me is money, and especially in northern Wisconsin. You can catch big fish, small fish, in between fish, all in that. It's like 6 1/4 inches long. You add the blade on the back, you're approaching 7. That hasn't changed. So basically taking the glitch and turning it into the pedigree just by adding the weight in a different spot and adding a little more weight to create what I wanted it to do was a little task without making the bait any bigger, but I think it turned out well.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I think he's being humble. I've watched him weight these baits. I've been to his laboratory. I've watched him paint. Wait till you see some of these, you see in the background all them baits hanging up there. Wait till you see some of the colors he's got coming. It's not just about the color, because I do believe in contrast, but I see the effort that he puts in. He's very organized, very meticulous. I mean, I'll be honest with you. He's got these show baits coming right now, and they get used enough in my boat. I've already got an order for 11 baits in, and I'm not going to see him till after the show because he's working on show baits. I mean, here's the other thing. He makes every bait by hand. I've watched him do it. He actually, gets them, cut out. He carves them back. He shapes them. He does it all with his hands. And that's what makes him so hard to get. He's making, some companies will buy, or say they'll have a company make their blanks for them, and then they can start from making the rods or making the baits right from when they're made by another company. He hand makes every one of his baits. That I can tell you.
And honestly, the whole color thing, it's so fun. I mean, if you're one of those people that doesn't believe that colors matter, that's fine. But in my opinion, you're no fun at parties. I mean, if every musky bait was just black and white, it's just not as much fun. Like, does it matter a bunch? I don't know. I mean, I certainly have my colors that I absolutely love. Like we were talking about, black and green for me is a huge confidence bait, or confidence color, I guess. But I love it. Like show season comes around, you get these limited edition colors like that. That's part of the fun. Whether they catch more fish or not, who cares? It's literally part of the fun. It makes it cool. Novelty, whatever you want to call it. I'm a big fan. So yeah, the cooler, more, unique show colors that people come out with, in my opinion, the better. I just think it's awesome to see kind of the creativity come to life. Because at the end of the day, you're kind of an artist in a way making these baits. Like, it takes a lot to put into it. So you might as well finish it off with a sweet paint job.
He does do it. He is very talented in his painting. That's one thing he's got. I'm not a big, I believe in contrast. There's certain colors I like. He knows what colors I like. Depending on where I'm fishing, I have certain patterns, but then he'll take and put a spin on me and show me a new color. I'm like, stop it. I can't do this, because it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean,
yeah, and that's, to me, that's what keeps me going, or part of it. I mean, the building of it, the cutting it out, yet does it get monotonous? Very, when you're just sitting there and just cutting them all out and sanding and sanding and sanding and more sanding and tons of sanding. Your fingers are raw and you're just like, oh, why the heck am I doing this? And then I get to it and I get in that paint zone, and it is, I love it. I love coming up with show colors because it's just, to me, it's something different. I like I may not be the artist of artists because I know there's thousands of guys out there, hundreds of bait builders their paint jobs to me are a lot more detailed, but my angle is more for that contrast, the color to contrast ratio. That's what I go for, plus a little flair.
And that's why I like his baits. I mean, I like his colors because I believe in contrast. I do believe in contrast. I do believe, I'm going to tell you something. I'll just touch this is kind of away from the baits, but not really. I had a friend of mine who worked at the Marshfield Clinic. He was an optometrist, and in his specialty, he was the head of research and development. If he was alive today, he would tell you that for those people that say that color doesn't matter, he would argue that point because he studied Musky's eyes. I mean, he had sets of Musky's eyes. And one of the things that he found out, at least in the 49 sets that he had, I mean, he didn't just go out and kill muskies. He got them from taxidermists. I know I had some customers back in those days that wanted to mount their first legal fish. So we took the eyes out. He showed me what he needed. We would save those eyes, and we would, I'd put them in the, freezer, let them know I've got them. He did that with a couple other guys. All told, he had 49 sets of eyes. And one thing he found out about muskies, at least in the 49 sets of eyes that he actually he did the lobotomy on, or whatever you want to call it, they were all nearsighted. Every set of eyes was nearsighted. So does that mean that every muskie's nearsighted? No, maybe, could be, but the fact of it is, at least 49 sets were nearsighted. The other thing is they do see color as we see it, but they don't see colors. There's other colors they don't see. And like, for instance, chartreuse is a really popular color, right?
Mhm.
Chartreuse is nothing more than white underwater.
Yep.
It's
What about a
chartreuse.
lemon tail bulldog? They don't see the tail?
It's white.
The lemon?
It's white.
Is it a
White.
different shade of white though?
Yes, it is. It's got more of a neon look to it as opposed to just regular white.
Huh.
But even like the blades, like copper was more orange. And people are starting to use copper now, but copper actually has orange. Well, orange is one of the colors that are most visible to a muskie. Fluorescent green is one of the most colors that are visible to a muskie. This isn't just me, piping up, off some YouTube channel or something. This is fact. This information came from a man that makes his living as an optometrist, or did make his living. He's in charge of research and development. I used to egg him on about writing a book. He said, I can't do that. I said, first of all, if I do write a book, you're still going to have your know-it-alls telling you they know better, even though that's what he does. I mean, muskies have rods and cones just like human beings do. And so therefore, they see things a little bit differently, but there are some things that are very relevant, just like a human being. And so there is something to this. And so Mike's talent, when he paints, he blends his colors to the point where there's contrast. He's got dark, he's got light, medium. Even when he paints the back, he paints it so that you can see the bait coming through the water, so you can watch what the bait is doing. He's very talented. For the way he paints, I would say he's definitely in the top 5 as far as one of the best painters in the business. And I know a lot of guys that paint baits.
Thanks. One thing,
you're humble about it, and you're getting embarrassed. I'm glad. I'm waiting. I'm trying to see if I can get you turned red. So.
Well, I was just going to say, you made that comment. I paint the backs. I kind of do on some I don't. I'm a firm believer. Everybody talks about wanting to be able to see their glide bait go left and go right and go wherever they want it to go. I may be old school, been musky fishing for over 35 years. And I know where my bait is. I know what my bait's doing. I don't need to see it go left to know that it's going left. I think people get too ingrained to know what's it doing. Yeah, you do want to kind of know what your bait's doing, and you should be able to feel that. I mean, that's my opinion.
But
I'm with you there.
If the bait is balanced, Mike, if the bait is balanced and it's built correctly, you don't have to watch the bait. You know it's working right.
You can feel when something's off.
You can feel it.
Feel on the rod tip, the line. Yeah,
everything.
I started to try and build my confidence with the pedigree that I got last year, and it took a little bit. I felt like I had to work it slightly different than some other glide baits, and once I figured it out, I had confidence in that first half of the cast. I couldn't see the bait that it was still doing, and when it wasn't working on me or I felt it go wrong, I would just let it sink for an extra second or two, kind of get that thing in line again, and then start tapping away, and then it's started catching and getting more and more confidence on it. So it helped a bunch. I just, so Mike, with the pedigree, I guess we'll just go there since I've used it. I found with that one, I do like to use the rod tip a little bit more. I know there's some glides that I like to use just the reel for. I found with the pedigree, I like to use the rod tip more. Do you have any weighing opinions on that, or how you like to work the pedigree?
You do however you want to do it. That's the beauty of it. I mean, too many people are so in they've got a preconceived notion of what a bait is supposed to do and how they're supposed to work the bait, instead of the bait telling the fisherman what it wants to do. And if you're doing it right, and I can work it with a rod tip, I can rod tip up, and the nose will start breaking the surface a little bit. You can to the side to keep it normal. You go down a little deeper, slow it down, use the rod. Don't use the rod, just use the reel handle. There's just, it's so many different ways. And then on top of that, if you get a fish following it, there's nothing better to do than to sit and figure something out. I mean, for a while, I would just, not so much with the pedigree, because that blade kind of acts as a balloon on the back to reel it in. But the original Glitch, there was a fish that would follow that, and I would just reel it straight in, and it would S-curve all the way back. And sometimes that's all it took, the fish to be like, hey, wait, it's getting away. The fisherman needs to know, needs to understand that they need to learn the bait to work it properly. So is there a good way? Reel handle and rod tip? I like the rod tip. Yeah, I use more rod tip, I think, than anything else with the pedigree.
I think they should hire Gus Manti, and they should, and he'll give you lessons how to use pedigree.
I could do that. Yep. That's always an option. And the one thing with so I haven't used your Glitch yet. I do really want to add that into the arsenal. But with the pedigree, what I found compared to other gliders as well, it was well said how you described to work it, but with the speed of it, I found that if you pull too hard or too much, the pedigree it's not one of those gliders that swings out 5 feet to the left, 5 feet to the right. It's more of a narrow path because that blade adds a little bit of extra drag. So I found if you're using the reel handle, it's shorter revolutions, and if you're using the rod tip, it's quicker or shorter snaps. I think you maybe agree on that.
I agree. And the other thing that I think people don't get with gliders is you have to feed the bait line. Too many people pull and reel, and they're not giving it the slack line that bait needs to get its nose over and do its glide thing. You really need to basically, once you snap it, whether you just use the reel handle or the rod, you're putting that rod tip, pointing it right back at the bait, because you need that slack line for that bait to work properly.
Yep, that's a very important piece as well, because you don't want to be pulling it, picking up that slack before you give it the glide. Then you're just,
and that's where everybody wants to use these high gear ratio reels that are like, oh, we got to pick up all that slack line. No, you don't. You don't want to pick up that slack line.
No. My favorite setup with that this past year, I think I have it. It's like a 6:3 to 1, I think, gear ratio.
Yeah, I wouldn't go any more than that.
Yeah, smaller reel size. I liked it a lot on like an 8.6 medium heavy. Seemed to do the trick.
Yeah, medium heavy with glide baits, smaller glide baits are your rod. You want that flex in that tip. You want that forgiveness, not only for working the bait, but when the fish does hit it, that rod's going to give you a little more forgiveness. It stops those swing and misses that everybody calls it. I think what happens is people use too stiff of a rod, and they're actually pulling the bait away from the fish. You want a glide, let's be honest, it's back and forth. The fish has got a 50-50 chance on when it's going to strike and hit it. And you got to give it as the best option. To me, it's a softer tip, and I use a shorter. I use it under 8 feet. I don't go anything over 8 for glides. But yeah,
right. Yeah, it's a great glide setup. I definitely agree with having a little bit more of a, some action to the rod, having it be more of a medium heavy instead of something that's just a pool cue that you're just gonna rip the bait right out of right away from the fish. Another thing that I noticed with your bait that I screwed up on is actually one time I put different hooks on and it didn't work. They were too lightweight. Do you want to explain the importance of, the hooks you got on there, the weighting, if you can switch hooks or seen any, benefit to that or not? The hooks that you put on there are great. They're like the BMC. I don't know the name of them, but they're
like, they're the 4X heavy, shorter gap. So I haven't really done a lot of playing around with hooks. I found hooks that I used. I started out long ago with like wide gap hooks. Um, I don't know. I just kind of fell into some for my regular glitches. I just run the Mustad 3551s. A little bit lighter, but they're longer. The longer of the hook. I try to use those on the pedigree, but the way the hook placement, where the eye placement is, the hooks kept tangling. So that's why I went with a shorter shank. Honestly, I can't say one way or the other. I found it something that works. I stuck with it. I haven't really played around.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm wrong with that. What else do we want to get in here on the baits? You got something, Max?
Oh, I was just gonna ask. I mean, you brought up that you've been fishing for 35 years. I think I always like talking to people that build baits. It's kind of a funny thing, right? Like musky fishing is complicated enough as it is, and then you add the layer of, I want to actually catch fish on my own product to the mix. Like you're laughing. I'm the same way. Like I crack up at you guys are nuts. Like I have a hard enough time, deciding what I want to throw on any given day out fishing. You're like, well, I got all these options, but I'm just going to build my own thing too. So, you said you've been fishing for 35 years. Like, take us back a little bit. I mean, was it been predominantly Wisconsin waters, central Wisconsin waters? You talked about northern Wisconsin too. I mean, kind of where is your affinity with the muskies in general in the state of Wisconsin? Where do you spend most of your time, or where'd you kind of spend most of your time learning the sport?
Growing up, it was all northern Wisconsin. I was born in Rhinelander, grew up there for a while before we moved to Stevens Point. And from there, that's kind of where I caught the musky bug and spent a lot of time, all over the Minocqua area. We'd go Rhinelander area, Eagle River, Land O'Lakes, Mercer, Boulder Junction, Manitowish Waters. It's like every season we picked an area and just worked it.
Were you running with buddies or your family?
My dad got me into the fishing, and I mean, he's 78 this year. He's running right along with me every trip we go up. So
it's cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like fishing with a best friend. So I've been fishing up north, and then when we moved, my wife and I moved down to southeastern Wisconsin, I still made bi-monthly trips up north. I mean, gas was expensive, but whatever, I needed to be up there. That was my relaxation. Plenty of years of little fish, no fish. You start playing with your own baits and you're like, what am I doing? I can't even catch them normally. Well, I'm trying to something completely different, and let's try this. Let's see how bad I can suck with this bait. But when I had that first fish move on that one, I'm telling you that there was no better feeling. And I thought there couldn't be a better feeling than that. Then I caught one on it, and I thought there was no better feeling than that. And then I'm getting other people catching fish on them is just, that's the icing on top of the cake right there. That is when you get that phone call or that message that, hey man, I just had my best day ever. Using your baits, we caught 6 fish, or we caught 8 fish, or dude, I just caught a 52, or those stories. I mean, I live for that. I love it. I love that so much.
That's awesome. What I was going to ask that's actually very good. Going back and how you got into it, we kind of sped right by that. But what I was going to ask also to, pump your baits up a little bit more, Mike. What's the biggest on your baits, and what's your biggest on your baits?
My biggest is 46 and a quarter.
No sloucher.
No, it's actually I have 2 at 46 and a quarter on my baits, and that's about as big as I've been able to topple. The biggest has been 53. I think it was 53, 52 and a half, 53, something like that.
What's the furthest away place that somebody's been using your baits as well? Like out, I'm sure it's well out of state.
New Jersey, and I sold one to a guy in Maine, and then west would be was it Utah, whatever where the Tigers are out there.
Oh yeah. Utah, Washington.
Yeah, well,
Colorado.
I haven't nothing to Washington. Colorado might have been one out there. Other than that, I've got a couple up in Canada, but most of them, the majority, are right here down home, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa's starting to pick up. Minnesota's a holdout. I have a very few sales in Minnesota. They like their baits big. We'll see about that. We might have something in the works for that. But Michigan's got it. Oh yeah, Michigan, Ohio's. Surprisingly, the boys down in West Virginia are starting to take hold, even though they're like the glider capital of musky world.
So many come out of there.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat when I can infiltrate that a little bit and just be like, cool, I'm doing something right. I mean, I had one guy last year right before the show. He was in I think it was West Virginia or Tennessee. He's like, oh man, he goes, can I, is there a chance I can get one? I'm like, I'm kind of just building for the show right now. I said, you know what? Sure. I'll get you one. So I sent him one, and 2 days later, he's sending me pictures of fish that he's been catching on him. So I was like, you can't beat that at all. And, Taylor Flannery, I mean, I sent one to him, and he gets it and puts it on his rod 20 minutes later, and he's got a fish in the net with it. So, I mean,
I do remember that story. Reading about that. That's so cool.
That right there is, I'm telling you, that's like an ultimate high in the bait building world for me, anyways.
Rich, what are you cooking up over there?
Gus. You know what this is, Gus?
I see it.
Yeah,
it's a pedigree.
It looks like a little bit bigger pedigree.
I was gonna say it's a little longer.
Remember I told you earlier? These, before they even come on the market, he tests them. I think, what is this, 9 inches?
Yeah, around there.
Yeah.
And then we got this one.
Yeah, that one's awesome.
That's cool.
To give you in comparison size.
Is that like 4.5? 4 inches?
Yeah, roughly around there. Yeah. Yep.
Man, that seems like a very difficult size
actually
to get a glide bait going.
So it's roughly, it's like closer to 5. That thing will turn around on itself. That they have to be worked slow. I mean,
squirrely.
Most not squirrely. No. It'll stay put left to right. But if you give it enough slack, that nose will fling all the way around and face back at the fish, basically.
Yeah, that's a deadly tactic there.
Yeah. But it's still tweak mode, so we don't let things out all the way. That's for sure.
Right.
So
you guys got to see it. So, but here's what they said. It's like, listen, Mike and I, we live Mike, 25 minutes apart.
Yeah, not even. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes he'll, he's got an idea. I'll go over, throw my 2 cents in. I mean, he takes 2 cents from a lot of people. He wants to know, so, we've been on the water, and and he plays. He truly plays. I mean, he makes sure that the bait is going to do what it's supposed to do. So,
yeah.
And I sit back over through the years, and I've watched Mike, and he builds baits like the old time guys used to. I mean, he builds them, he tests them, he makes sure they work. They're as foolproof as they can be, but it's the fishermen that make them, the fishermen do things with them that make them kind of foolish if they would just take the time to learn the bait. So that's, I think, the key thing with gliders. But, a good glider, like Mike's baits, they're going to have that belly roll. They're going to have that shimmy. There's several baits that do that. But one of the things you said, that, Max, you talked about having all these different baits. Carpenters, they got like 4 or 5 hammers they use on a job. So, to do different things. Why would you carry basically a hammer that does the same thing, but have 6 or 7 of them? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Have the same hammer, but have 6 or 7 of them. So, that's what I'm trying to say. I do fish Mike's baits. I can tell you basically 3 gliders, 4 gliders that I use consistently. And then there's other gliders on the market, and that's fine. Everybody's got their favorites. But these, at this point in my life, this will be my 57th year fishing muskies, my 57th season. And, of that time, I guided for 21 years. And being in this business, I get to play with a lot of stuff. So why have 6 or 7 gliders that do the same thing? Why not just have the best?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good point. Like I think my, what I was talking about earlier with the whole color thing with, it's fun to have show colors. It's fun to have different colors. It kind of goes too with baits. Like that's why I think I appreciated Mike saying right from the jump, like when I was about to ask the question, like, Mike, what makes your bait so good? And he was just like, honestly, sometimes they're not. Like if it's not the right tool for the situation, it's not it. And the reality is, when you're musky fishing, 90% of the time, if not more, you're spent just hucking baits, right? And you got to continue to keep yourself entertained. Obviously, there's an analytical thing that goes into it. Oh, what should I be throwing now? How should I be, catching these fish? But there's a fun element to it, like being able to get good at using different tools. So then when the time comes that there is a hot glider bite, like what you're doing when that happens. You got another flying through here. Rich, this is a podcast, just so you know, so no one can see this, but
yeah, but I'm whetting Gus's appetite right now.
I know, I love it.
That's a good contrast. That's like a shiner almost.
It's like a shad, and this is like color shift on the back. It's like a color shift.
Oh Lordy, yeah. Now I can see the blue.
Yeah.
Before it just looked black and white, and I'm like, awesome. But then he moved it in the light,
and it's got glitter. I
like glitter.
Oh yeah,
on baits.
I'm telling you, you go into Mike. Was it 2 weeks ago, Mike? I was down in his basement. I forget what it was. Come down to the basement to drop something off or whatever. I forget what it was, but I got in the basement. And he noticed I was looking at the different colors, and all of a sudden my eyes got asphyxiated onto one bait. And I made a beeline for that bait, and it's called Sunny. There it is.
Wow. I like
it's
that
nice.
a lot.
The picture you're seeing
like
doesn't do it justice.
Like a barred up sunfish. I dig that a lot.
Did I not, Mike? I mean, I went right to it.
Yeah, I had just finished it up, and I didn't even have epoxy on it. I just kind of like hung it on a hook, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I kind of like how that turned out, because that's not what was intended by any means, and I messed it up. And I was like, well, let's roll with how it is, and that's how I get my one-offs. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I like how this one turned out. This one's kind of like nice. And then, and no sooner than I said that, then he comes walking down the stairs yelling at me, and walks right in, and we're talking, and his eyes looked right at it, and he walked right over to it and grabbed it. And I'm like, okay, well, that got his attention. He looked past like 25 other baits hanging there for other colors, but he went right for that one. So it's kind of interesting.
No, he's going to bring it to the show. So, I mean, he works hard at these things. I guess I can tell you, one, yes, we're virtually neighbors, but at the same time, I watch what he does. I watch the work he goes through. And I think that's when you look at the amount of baits he produces a year versus the amount of big fish that have been caught on it, that's pretty impressive, that number. So, you know what I mean? He doesn't, for the amount of baits he puts out, but he can only put out so many baits because, I mean, he goes to a full-time job. He has a family, a wife and 2 daughters, and then he puts a lot of time, and he's building all he can for the show. So that's what makes it really hard for him. I mean, some people get mad. I think this world's changing. It's a world of entitlement. I want it now.
Well, that's you can thank social media for that, or that not social media, just internet in general. People can information at the snap of a finger, and And I've experienced that where people kind of get antsy because I can't produce a bait in 3 hours. And yeah,
it doesn't take 3 hours to make that bait.
So what?
I mean, it's hard. He's got a lot of time invested here.
Yeah. So let's get into that. I mean, so you said last year you brought about 235, 240 baits ish, give or take, maybe some more to the show. I think it probably would be good for people to know. I mean, I'm curious myself, like, not to say that you're, slaving around the clock 24/7 here, but I mean, how many hours have you at a ballpark goes into building these baits, getting ready for the show, feeling like you're going to have an adequate number of, lures to stock, for people to get their hands on? I mean, what would you say that amount of sweat equity that you've put into this is like to get ready for this show?
A shit ton, if that's a volume of words.
Yeah, I believe that's the European measurement of.
Is it? Yeah, the metric system. Yeah.
Metric shit ton.
But for the sake of how much time I've got into it, I've never really sat and counted. I don't know if I really want to sit and count. I started making the blanks for the show back in October. I thought I was doing really well. And turns out, end of December hit, and I'm going, oh crap, I should have started sooner. But
you'll be 5 full months of post, full-time job working on this.
Yeah, so earlier than I started, obviously October, November, I was still fishing. I'm still doing other things. So it's come home, cut some, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't the number one priority on my list of after work festivities.
You did put a lot of time in though, Mike. You didn't put as much time, I think, in the water. You didn't, I don't feel you put enough time on the water. I mean, if I had to make baits and I put the time on, I don't know that I'd do it.
But I enjoyed myself. That's the thing. The building of the baits wasn't like my life during the fall. I had other responsibilities, and I chose to do those, and I tried to get ahead a little bit as I went for the show. It's crunch time now. I'm hoping to the way it's stacking up, we're right around 250 for the pedigrees, this alone, the pedigrees, and then my glitches and the pacifiers will be on top of that. So again, in my opinion, that's a lot, but to other people, that's probably nothing. And that for it is what it is at this point. That's all I can get out for the time that I have into it.
That's a lot.
I just think it puts things into a good perspective. Sorry, Gus, you go ahead. I just wanted to say it puts things into a good perspective when you're at these shows and you're buying, X dollar amount of bait. Like I just kind of wanted to frame it in a way where it shows like the amount of work that kind of goes into building these things. It's not like you just, wave a wand and make a bunch of money kind of thing.
Take a board, put 2 cuts and a little bit of sandpaper, and it's done to go. No, there's, the amount of times that you're handling the bait is just one lure is just asinine. If you're looking at doing this, for people that do this full time, I give them all the credit in the world, because it's like you're crunching them out like crazy. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. I love the aspect. I love sitting down, the creativity side of it. I love seeing pictures of fish caught on it. I love getting these letters, these notes, these phone calls, these messages. It all plays in. It's to me, it's not about the money. It's never been about the money. I mean, could I charge a lot for my lures? Yeah, probably more. I mean, I've had people tell me I could charge more, but I'm not going to, because I want to make it affordable for people. So the whole time aspect ratio to all of that is, I'm not worried about that, if that makes sense to you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big time.
It's kind of funny. We were, you were talking about the making the baits and how much time you got into it, Max. But that brings another point up about baits. I know a lot of musky fishermen, have kind of brought up, the point about how expensive musky baits are getting. I don't think when I got old enough and I got into this business, I started, doing, things, making bucktails, that type thing. You would buy a deer's tail for 75 to 90 cents, of a deer's tail. And if you bought a premium tail, extra long hair, it would be about $1.25. That same tail today is costing between $9 and $13 a tail. So I guess to correlate that back to, Mike, here you got a bucktail where, your expense on hair has gone up. That's why a lot of guys went to tinsel, but even tinsel, making those tinsel skirts is not cheap. I mean, if they build them, if they make them themselves, which they don't, because you have to have a wheel to mix the colors. There's a handful of companies out there that actually make what they call hanks. And so when it breaks down to where the hank is about $3.50 to $4, $4.50 for, per tail, per bucktail. And the same thing with blades. I mean, blades today is just astronomical, as far as the price of blades. So it's the same thing in his situation. He's got wood, he buys wood, and then he starts, the labor. And then after he shapes the wood and gets it all done, then he's got to take and he's got to put lead into it. You got the price of hooks. Hooks have doubled, doubled, tripled almost.
The price of lead is going through the roof too at times.
So when you get down to it, people say, well, why is that bait $50, $60, $70? Well, there you go. So, why should he says price is not important, but I think he could probably make more money working at McDonald's right now, than he could making those baits, to be honest with you. Am I wrong, Mike?
I don't know. I don't know what McDonald's charge or costs right now.
Dude, they're paying them people $15, $17 an hour to flip burgers.
Like I said, though, to me, it's all about. I grew up with not a lot of money, so for me to buy musky baits was a struggle at times. But that was back when I could get a depth raider for $10.99 at Gander Mountain. The price is just through the roof for some of these baits, and I know what it's like to be staring at a wall of baits like, oh, I'd love to have that, but I can't afford it. And I don't want to put myself out there and just be like, oh guys, hey, spend $75 on this bait. No, another reason too, because when you start putting a number over 5, people put a different expectation on that bait. They put this bait's going to be somewhat magical. And then they're even more disappointed when they can't catch a fish on it. That's what I feel anyways, but
I remember when Suiks were $7.99.
Yeah, $8.99, $9.99. Yeah.
Now they're $30.
Mm-hmm.
And when you use them, you get a year out of the wood ones, and at best, if you have a good season.
That's okay. I'm all right with that.
Well, it's a good season.
Musky. When a guy tells me, I've had this Suick for 20 years, and he says, and it's been around a long time. That's the guy that tells me he doesn't use that Suick, because I've never been able to make a Suick last. I can't make a Suick last 2 seasons. I mean, I can't if you're throwing it, and they show me their Suicks and they're pretty clean. I mean, it just doesn't happen, so you got to get on the water and you got to throw them, you got to fish them. But he puts a lot of work in these baits. I've been fortunate. I've seen a lot of guys make baits. So when you look at Mike, his baits are 40, 50. I think I'll tell you what, these pacifiers, I've watched him, he's very meticulous. That's a pacifier turning on the wheel right now? Is it not?
Yeah, there's one on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the one, but I'm going to tell you, they're a pain in the rear end to make. So they're going to cost a little bit more, but I've watched them. They're a pain. I don't even, I don't have the patience. I can make a bucktail. I can make hook sharpeners. I can make even topwater lures, but I do not have the patience to make a glider. No way. I would go crazy. you know, but you have to have a certain personality to do that, and he's got that. So,
I don't know if that's good or bad.
yeah, but you're pretty methodical when you do stuff.
I am, and I kind of get a little anal and a little harder on myself than I think others are. But I weigh everything. That's a telltale for me. If I get wood and I'm weighing just the empty blanks, then I kind of know how to go about weighting it from there to make it work. So there's a lot of time and invested in just downtime and involved in the bait making process, and that doesn't even include the first coat of epoxy, the primer, the paint, the 3 more coats of epoxy that I put on, so that bait's at least 4. That's hard, Max, to tell you. That's the hardest time to fathom in, is how much time I have spent doing non-flashy work on the bait.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ask it to, maybe there's a piece of the question to justify spending money or whatever, but I think it's more or less just, it's really fun to chat with guys like yourself who are making these lures and just talking about the time that goes into them, because, it's fun for us to talk to people that are quote unquote small batch bait makers, because you guys are doing really cool stuff. And I think sometimes it just gets lost in the shuffle about how much time goes into it. We have our good buddy Nick Amrose from up here, and he sends us Snapchats of, the behind the scenes stuff. And like every time I see those videos, I just think like, God damn, I never thought about how much time and effort goes into some of these lures. And I think if people can listen to this and maybe just it's something that they appreciate a little more, or just think about a little bit more when they're at the, any Musky Expo, whether it's any of the upcoming ones. But when they're at the Wisconsin Musky Expo and they're looking at these baits, oh, should I buy it? Should I not? I kind of want to try it out. Like just understanding the process and how much time and effort kind of goes into it. And I think it's great that you said that, you don't look at it as like, oh my God, this is painstaking work. It's like, I enjoy it. I think that makes it even cooler. But it doesn't take away the fact that it's still a lot of time,
Yeah, they try to ignore that part of it.
You mentioned Max. You mentioned Nick Amrose. He's another one. That guy can build baits, and he can lay some paint down. He's very good at what he does. And what's more impressive is I did a video with Smith's Fishing Outdoors, and it was a dive and rise video, and showing some of those baits, and we showed Nick's bait. It's called Hammer Tackle Company, right?
Hammer Custom Lures, I think.
Hammer Custom Lures.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, when Fisher, got to work in that bait and watched how it walked side to side, I mean, Fisher was like, whoa, I mean, that comes from a small batch guy that really puts some time and doing a good job of making a bait. And you can see the differences between, say, a $20 or $30 bait versus a $40 to $60 or even $70 bait. You can see the differences in those baits.
So, yeah, Rich, we've been hammering home. Oh, go ahehead, Gus. I was just gonna say we're gonna talk a little bit about the Wisconsin Musky Expo, because we've been kind of hammering home on some of the small batch bait makers. I think if anyone's on the fence, like if they're going to go or not, I mean, I feel like a lot of the people that listen to this probably will, go to that show, but it seems to be like a good reason to go and check it out, right? Like getting an inside track and seeing like some of these, cool, unique small batch bait makers, something different. Everybody, all the staple baits work. They're awesome. I'm never going to say otherwise, the ones that everybody knows about, but it's cool to see kind of what some of these like, new unique baits are all about, I would say.
Well, that's what the Wisconsin Musky Expo is. I was going to tell you earlier, you were talking about, Mike was talking about, I enjoy doing this, and, and he's kind of like OCD, Rusty, and Mike knows Rusty, Rusty Robbins, he makes Rusty Custom Lures. He's the same way. He's him, Rusty, Mike, Tom, Harrison, Nick Ambrose. I kind of put those guys in a category that they're kind of like on the spectrum. You know what I mean? Because you gotta be just kind of messed up in the head to be able to take the time to. I'm serious. I mean, they are just articulate in making a bait, and that's what I've noticed with Nick, with Mike. I mean, Rusty just made me a rock bass, and it's wild. It's unbelievable. Yeah, there's what it is. See, we found out the real
Huffing
secret.
paint. Huffing paint all day.
It's the rattle cans he smith. So I know that's my new. I mean, these guys. I think on the spectrum, I really do, and I say that in a complimentary way. Really,
they got a lot of personality.
Yes, they do.
Their own personality, and that's actually own person. Yeah, that's what I was gonna quick describe, Max, before we're gonna go into maybe the expo. Is that what I really like about the small batch bait makers, and I think it stems off of why, say, a wooden suic is so popular. People talk about a couple of them, you get a bad batch or something like that, but then you get that one with its own personality, and it just straight up catches fish.
There you go.
And I think that's what I've always loved about suics, and that's what I've absolutely loved about these small batch bait makers that majority make them out of wood. Going off of I'm going to stem towards the pacifier here in a second, but stemming off of when you brought up the hammer jerk, when Nick got me one of those and I was using it, it was the first time I saw a dive and rise bait that it wobbled, and then when it was rising, it would start to like turn to the left, and then it would turn to the right, and then it would like start. It wouldn't just like twist; it was like turning in one direction and turn the other way. So, like, I've never seen a bait have a personality like that. And I can't say every single hammer jerk's gonna do that. I don't know if it was the weighting, the way I had the tail, and whatnot. But that's just what I love about using the wooden baits. And then we haven't really talked about it much, Mike, but you are presenting a brand new bait, the pacifier. You gave me one for myself to use this past season. I noticed that the one that I had, compared to what your finishing product is, the shape is a little bit different. I had a little trouble with the hooks catching a good bit. We talked through
As
that.
did I.
I'm sure you.
Yep.
Yeah, and you still took the feedback, and I know you're kind of more on the path of having it right. You said you've been working it for a couple of years. You kind of want to describe it. It's got a couple interesting characteristics that I think are really cool about it. And then how'd you come up with the name?
The name was just kind of thrown out there. Rich, what'd you call it? It pacifies the fish, or it acts like a pacifier right into the fish's mouth.
Well, that's what it does.
I love suics. I was a suic guy through and through, and the one thing I liked about a unweighted suic is that when you pulled it and when you gave it the slack, it not only went up but it went backwards. But the minute you put weight into it, all it did is go straight up and no longer traveled backwards. So I say a couple of years on this design. I've been on and off for probably 5 to 7 years of just trying to narrow something down for a dive and rise that I was happy with. Then a couple of years ago, I was talking with our good friend Kyle Frieges, and he was talking about his trip to Eagle Lake, and it's like, he loves his suics. He's a suic guy. He's like, but they don't make it on the rocks. They beat up, the nose breaks. And that's where it kind of just dawned on me, like, yeah, there's guys out there that make them with lips. Let's try it. Let's see what it does. Because to me, you put a metal lip on something that becomes more of like a diving, almost like a crankbait style. But I played around, different thicknesses, different lengths, sticking out further, coming in further. So it's got the 1/8 inch aluminum lip on the front. Takes the abuse pretty good. It's got a curved back, kind of a curved belly with with a pronounced belly where there's going to be a lead weight insert there for a screw-in weight, and then obviously my bladed tail that I put on the back now. That's going to be more of a finned or a forked blade on the back. The bait has a flat, I'm going to call it a flat rudder on the back side bottom that you pull it, it goes down, and then it shoots itself backwards on the rise. So
if people go to that, if the people go to that Smith's Fishing Outdoors video, it's called Dive and Rise or something, I forget, but it actually has the pacifier, as a, what do you guys call that thing? A thumbnail. And then you can see it. But if you watch the video, you can actually watch this bait work. It actually has a more vertical dive. So, like everybody still uses Suix. Suix work over. Yes, it's got that vertical dive. And
so the lip is going to create the nose to go down. Basically, the hook's facing backwards at the fish. So if the fish lunges at it, it's going to get hooked first. And then it shoots right back into their face if they don't hit it.
And that's where the name pacifier came from.
Yes.
When you're working that bait, you'll notice that it backs up right in their face. And a lot of times that will draw a reactionary strike by that happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the part about it backing up. It gets out of cover too if you. A weed bed.
Yeah. And then the best part about it is you can work it a bunch of different ways. So if you want it to run deeper, you just run the rod tip lower and pull harder. Medium depths or right along a weed edge, you just kind of work it along, it's more of a sideways pull. Mm-hmm. And you really want to make it dance, you rip it like a toad. hard up. And it's itself. That lip wants it to dig, but the line is pulling it up, so it's just an utter fight on itself. It's like chaos under the water. It's really worked this year. It really, really worked. I did not throw Suic at all the last 2 years. And coming from a guy that threw nothing but Suics, you want to, Max, talk about thinking you're going to suck because you're just going to decide to throw something on your own. Yeah, wait till you got to give a bait its fair share. And you start throwing something that you have no confidence in because you're like, I don't even know if it's going to work.
I know. Like I feel bad enough when I throw Suic, and I'm like, these have been working for 100 years. Why can't I catch one on them? But yeah.
And yes, I had my fair share of, Gus, we talked about the back hook backing up, and I've lost fish that way. I put a video out on my Facebook page of me losing a fish. It hit at boat side and it had the back hook, but one of the barbs was wrapped around the back ass of the bait, and it had all the leverage in the world at that point. And so it's, back to the drawing board. What do I have to do to not change the action? Because I had the action down that I wanted. So basically it was a lot of trial and error, and again, a lot of firewood, but I think I've got it, and I'm pleased to bring it out. It's going to be limited, very limited, just because it is a pain to make, and I'll just leave it at that. It's a product, and it put some nice fish in the boat for me, as others as well. It's been tested on Green Bay to the tune of the fish were lost, but quite a few upper 40s.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So right away from opening weekend on, so the bait had some good, strong feedback this year from the select few that had them.
Great. Sorry. That's great. Rich, what were you gonna say?
What?
Oh, never mind.
No, what I was gonna say is this: last year, when the word got out that Mike was going to be there with a booth, people started lining up at the doors at 9:30 in the morning.
Not for me.
Yes, they did.
Another thing
we went out and bought cheeseburgers for them because they were still sitting at lunch, and I felt bad, so we went over to Culver's and got a bunch of cheeseburgers. And for the guys that were there, we just gave them cheeseburgers down the line.
Some good Wisconsin hospitality right there.
Love to hear that. Another thing that I was going to ask Rich, and I think you know it, but or at least can approximately say? We were talking about numbers before. What's that head count going in the door right away, typically at the Wisconsin Muskie Expo? Because I've been a part of it and I've seen it, come flying in from a booth standpoint, and it's highly impressive.
400 people, 350 to 400 people.
Like right away.
Right away. They're in line. They go all the way back. If anybody's been in the, Central Wisconsin Convention Center, Holiday Inn is connected to that building. They line up all the way down the hallway, all the way around right to the doors, and they have to circle back, to get in the doors, and they're ready. So we've done some things to, to move the line faster. We're very humbled and thankful that people are there that come that, early, but that's crazy. We've got a system where we can move those people in, so they're not standing in line very long, but they choose to, there's a lot of guys that'll show up at 9:30 in the morning. I'm telling you.
That's unreal.
9:30, 10 o'clock. Gus, you have a booth there this year. Muskie's on tap has got a booth. He's got his clothing. If you want to talk to him about fishing, this next coming season. But like he said, he has seen this. You're going to be there early in the morning now, Gus, for the the first time, really.
Yeah.
You were last year too.
Yeah, I don't think I got there though until like maybe 10 a.m. on Friday.
Right, but you're going to have to be there earlier this year.
Oh yeah, now I got to actually set up stuff. Last time I just helped the tail end,
but
and
I'm
then
telling
through the
you,
show.
You've seen that. You just wait. You're going to be there early, and you're going to shake your head.
Yeah,
it's crazy, but awesome. and I'm thankful that they're there, But we try to make it, what we've done. We've lined up booths on the outside in the hall so that I can move some of the line down into that area where there are some booths, and the thing that happened last year, we get to talk to people, and so some people were getting agitated. And they told me the reason where they wanted everybody to stay in line because they didn't want anybody to get ahead of them because they were going to Conklyn's booth because they wanted to get a pedigree. So, when I talk to several people that tell me that, that there's a lot of people that are lined up for that. It could be, they could be Tom's, custom baits, Rusty's, Bam Bam. Those were the 4 big booths that everybody wanted to get to first last year. There's a lot of great booths in that show, and there's a lot of work that we go into. But what the Wisconsin Muskie Expo is known for is the fact that we have a lot of small batch manufacturers.
Yeah,
that's what we're known. That's what we have.
I love that part about it. That's what I always loved. It's still to this day easily my favorite show. Always look forward to it the most. On top of the big couple, we got, Team Rhino Outdoors is going to be there. I'm assuming and Muskie Innovations. Yep. And then what's another big booth? Is Chaos. Ross is kind of gets a big corner,
Ross's
but then
Sport Shop is there. Taps and Tackle are there.
Taps and Tackle. That covers a big
Actually, I'm going to give everybody that listens to this podcast a deal. So you got Burnin' Eights there. Burnin' Eights has got some custom colored pedigrees. Taps and Tackle have some custom colored pedigrees. Actually, Mike is going to have some JC Nuges, which is basically John Carlson Nuge. Everybody talks about the, Team Rhino color, the criminal,
Yep.
I'm telling you, we were using the Nuge, basically, which is white, black bars, and orange belly years ago. Okay. 18 years ago, we kind of figured out, it was called the Nuge, which is now, a variation. The Nuge, the criminal is a variation of the Nuge is what it really is. So, we do, yes, you're going to have some of your bigger guys there, but then you have a whole lot of little guys. And Mike is one that has, that people gotten wind of, and he gets hammered. I could see the look in his eye last year when the doors open. I finally came in. I could see the look of fear in his eyes. because he's not one to, he likes people, but he's kind of he keeps to himself. And all of a sudden he had the world just coming down on him. And I could just see his eyes going, boop, boop, boop. He didn't know what to do.
I don't think I've ever been more out of a comfort zone than I ever was in my life that Friday afternoon, and then again on Saturday morning. And by Sunday, by Saturday at 9:40, I was taking orders because I felt bad that I didn't have enough baits for everybody. Right. So that was another lesson learned, I guess. This year I am not going to be taking orders at the show because I got done with the show and I proceeded then to work straight through the summer building baits and filling orders. So I actually sold more baits through orders after the show than I actually did at the show. So and it was kind of a crazy year, so I'm trying to avoid that craziness because I still have to get the store something. So
yeah. And one question, I don't know if you have an answer for it yet, but are you going to put a limit on your baits at all? I know that some people do.
The pacifier being a limited number. I want as many people to fish it as possible, so that'll be a limit of one. From here, at this current standpoint, I don't know if I'm going to put limits on the pedigrees.
But he's leaning towards it. We were talking earlier, because there were guys that are coming in there, and here's the thing that happened that I want. And he and I talked about this a few days ago. I said, there are guys that are coming in trying to buy 7, 8, 9 of them at a crack, and then they show up on these musky, sell sites for $25 more than what they paid for.
Yeah,
he didn't like that.
I hate that. I noticed that last year, right after working the Team Rhino booth in Minnesota, like that next Monday, people are reselling DKs, and I'm like, I was there, I saw that color, that person bought it for X number at Team Rhino, and is now flipping it for $50 more, just because
it's ridiculous.
He was able to get there. It's stupid. It is really stupid.
So I wish more guys would put that limit on people. I mean, if you truly want to fish the bait, but it's just like when we have a pizza vendor party on Friday night, we do the pizza night thing. I'll have guys that'll walk up and they'll load their plate with a full pizza. And then the other guy's complaining because there's not enough, because you have about a half a dozen that feel they got to take a mountain of pizza back to their table to eat. I mean, I think Mike wants to,
it's a tough line to walk, because as much as I want to have the sales and people to have the baits, it's hard for me to say, well, hold on, buddy, you only get 3. It's kind of counterintuitive to what you want to do. But at the same time, if I'm coming with, say, 250 pedigrees and I can get 125 people to limit of 2 to be using them, the odds are going to be better that they're catching fish than if 75 people buy them all. So I got to kind of look at it that way.
We've got 3,000 people that come through those doors. Okay, that's an honest number of people. A lot of guys, show promoters, have inflated their numbers that, we got 10,000. A show like the Madison Fishing Expo, there's 10,000, 12,000 people that come through the door. But these other muskie shows, trust me, there is not 10,000 people going through those doors. Okay. So, and we talk numbers, with other promoters, and we work with a couple of them. And I'm telling you, we have 3,000 people come through that door. These other people are getting bummed because they get to the show. Maybe they had to work on Friday night or Saturday morning. They come to the show when they can. They want a shot at having a pedigree. And so.
Yeah. And that's why I held off last year. I didn't put them all out on Friday. I think I would have sold them all on Friday. But I
think you would have too.
I've been in that scenario. I've been in that scenario where you go to a bait that it's hot and it's going to be hot that year, and you show up and they're sold out, and you're like, well, this is the soonest I could have gotten here, and it's 11 o'clock on Saturday. So I am humbled that happened to my bait. It's crazy to even think about it, but I'm going to try my best to have as much for everybody to be able to grab.
No,
So
that's
that
good.
means
And
that means limits. That means limits, I guess.
sure. Yeah. No, I was just curious because I've seen some bait makers do that, and then I've seen some that don't. But I know it gets pretty hectic at your booth. I think I was around it twice when you put out baits, for sure on Friday, and that was a lot of people jammed into a 10 by 10 um, booth.
It
Is that
was it was funny because I told my dad, yeah, 10, and I told it was 10 by 8. Yeah, I told my dad, I'm like, let's
Man.
try to keep track of what sells, because I wanted to kind of like what were the hotter colors, what weren't, and so he was going to hit a notebook. He was going to write down the color and what sold. And after the first 10 people, he's like, I couldn't. He goes, I couldn't take their money fast
keep
enough.
up.
They were just he goes, they were just throwing the money at me. I was like, I'm like, oh, I guess it didn't matter when they all sold. So they're
Right.
all a hot color.
Hey, Gus, I had the
Mhm.
fire marshal ask me if we could do something about breaking up because the
Jeez.
aisle was so blocked up. I'm not kidding you. The fire marshal came through the building doing their inspections and asked me if there was something we could do to alleviate because it was so bogged down in that aisle that because of that. I mean,
but it was only for an hour.
yeah, well, you're right. It was because they sucked everything up. I mean, ask Sterling King. He's a guide over on Green Bay and the Wisconsin River. He watched it happen.
He was right
Everybody
by
was
him.
taking pictures. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to happen again this year. I got a feeling.
Yep. And I know for a fact, Mike, when we talked about the reselling of baits or whatever on Facebook and whatnot, I think this is a very good thing for your baits. I never see yours come up because I think everybody that probably buys them hangs on
Has
to them
them.
because they love them and has them, which
Yeah.
is pretty cool. They're
I had
very
talked to one
impressive.
guy right after the show last year that he said he was able to get an original glitch from the swap meet that Saturday night
Really?
at the show. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, they had no clue what it was, and he took a photo of it and sent it to me. And I'm like, oh, that was what I made about 5 years prior, and it had somehow gotten its way around and made it to the swap meet. He goes, I picked it up for $15. I'm like, sweet.
Wow,
So
what a steal.
yeah, right.
Never sell
It's
it.
kind of funny. And I don't date my lures. I don't put a date in. I just put like a little watermark on there, but I change the size of it every year. So I kind of know at a glance how old they are. So I was able to tell at that point that I was around about 5 years old. So that was kind of neat to see that.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I agree with you. I don't see them on the secondary market either. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Either people are
I think it's a
throwing
good
them
thing.
away or they're keeping them.
Nope,
Key thing
keeping 'em.
about a pedigree, slow down.
More so the glitch.
Yeah,
The
more
glitch
so
is
the
meant
glitch.
to be
Yes.
slow, and there's too many people that they'll grab these gliders and they want to pull them. They want to pull hard and big, thinking it's going to be these big sweeping left to rights, and it's not. Gus, you and I talked about this, and the whole goal was to keep it in a small strike zone where the fish has less of a chance to miss it.
And that's what a
Basically,
glider's
that
supposed to
swing
do.
way left and way right, and they talk about a fish hit and miss. Well, it's because it zigged while you were zagging, and I'm trying to keep that bait right there in the strike zone. Even if it is zigging and zagging, the fish has got a good chance at hooking up with it. So yeah, the pedigree, you can slow it down, you can work it a little bit faster. That's the nice part about that bait. It's not a super fast blazing bait, but with glide baits in general, I mean, every bait out there, just people fish too fast. They fish their baits too fast.
I don't think there's really. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, even just gliders in general, I haven't used many that are doable to go really fast. The only ones that I have are almost those hybrid bass jointed ones where you can dang near just reel them, and those are the ones you can work fast. And
So
really
do yourself a favor when you get a chance, put a pedigree on and snap fast, short and fast, but give it a lot of slack in between. You can still work it fast. It'll still come in fast. The key is you got to give it that slack. Guys that fish fast are pulling, reeling, and that bait's just going to come straight in. So it's hard. I've been doing this for a long time. I know my rhythm. I know I can go fast. I know I can slow it down. So if I had somebody to take away from what I'm saying here, is learn the bait. Don't give up on the bait. Learn it. If you buy a bait from a guy at the show in Wausau, the Musky Expo, and you can't figure it out, send him a message and talk to him, call him, do something, because 9 times out of 10, it's probably how you're working it is just not right.
Yep.
That being said, I try my hardest to test every one of my baits. Some do slip through and some just don't work. I mean, some I'll put in a pool to try and it'll be like boom, boom, and 3 pumps, it works, 4 pumps. Okay, great. And it goes out and someone says, I can't work it. Well, okay, send it back to me. Here's a new one. And I get it. And one of 2 things are going to happen. It's not going to work at all, or I change the blade on it and it works fine. So it's that's another key with any of these baits with blades on the back, or even honestly a rubber tail. If some of these custom guys that are building it, something's just off, trim it down. That's all that stuff is doing, is creating drag, which is killing the action of the bait. So change it up, go smaller. I got a number 4 hatchet blade. Go to a number 3. Go to a smaller, like a number 1 or number 2 whip tail. They have a whip tail design. A lot of times that's what cures it. So, not to give secrets away, but I'm not trying to stop people from doing their own thing either. Experiment.
Yeah, somebody could find a new thing to do with your bait that you maybe never thought of. I don't know, and that's the beauty of it, that you have your Facebook and whatnot. People can just reach out and give the feedback or talk to you at the show. Obviously advised to talk outside of opening door times. You'll be a little
swing back a couple times. If I don't if you guys come and nobody can talk to me because I'm busy, please come back and talk, because I love it. I love to hear the stories. I want to get to talking and get to knowing people.
Yeah, and I know you had a ton of people around, but a buddy of mine said when he bought, I think 1 or 2 from you, it was during that hectic time, and some other customer or whatever yelled at him to hurry up behind because he was talking to you. I'm like, man, that sucks, but and he just probably came back and talked to you later or whatever. But
that's what I just come and talk to me. That's the best way you're going to learn about how to work a bait. I mean, I could talk to you all day long till I'm blue in the face, and if you can see my hand and how my hand works, a rod and a reel, you would understand it immediately. So that's my advice for that.
Max, are you back there?
He's sleeping.
Are you eating a piece of pizza?
I wish. Long day, Rich.
I understand about that. I understand this time of year. Let me tell you something. Sunday, yesterday, I fielded 61 phone calls. It's that time of year. We're 38 days away from the show, and you'd be amazed. And we try to help people the best we can. Everything from finding rooms. We filled up 5 hotels right now with people that are coming to the show. And what's happening, we're noticing. Of course, we, like Mike, we keep track of this. More and more people are making this a weekend. They're not just coming for one day. They come in Friday, they have a hotel. They'll come in and maybe stay Saturday night, and then they'll come in for a half a day on Sunday and then go home. They're making this a weekend deal. You know what I mean? So that's kind of interesting, that they're doing this. And we're watching the numbers go up and up. So I guess that's a good thing too, So, and I'll tell you, if somebody is, I'm going to just put this out there. If any of your listeners are trying to get a hotel room right now, Econo Lodge in Rothschild is they give everybody, we open it to the vendors first. And then if they have any rooms left, then we open it up to the public. And right now, what they do is if you call up and say, I'm with the Wisconsin Muskie Expo, the room is $79 a night. So they've got some Saturday night rooms open still, a few. So if they would call, don't go on Expedia, don't go on, these hotels.com, call the hotel. Because you're not going to get that price on hotels.com or Expedia, but we do have some rooms open on Saturday night only. So because everything is full.
Yep.
So,
That's good to know. Yeah. I already
Yeah.
luckily got my room in advance. I'm glad I didn't push that off any longer.
guys were booking rooms. Guys were booking rooms for the Wisconsin Muskie Expo last November.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were already booking their rooms, so that's kind of cool. This is going to be the 14th year that we've had the Wisconsin Muskie Expo. The dates are March 14th through the 16th. Friday, Saturday, and Sundays. The doors open up at 2:00 on Friday. The show goes till 8:00 at night. Saturday, the show opens up at 9:00 and stays open till 6. And then on Sunday, it opens up at 9 and it closes at 2:00. So it's at the Central Wisconsin Convention Center in Rothschild. It's an easy exit off. The building's right there and easy back on again. The cool thing about this building is Holiday Inn, I think, has got rooms still open within the block. They can tell them that they're there for the Wisconsin Muskie Expo, but they're definitely going to pay more. But it's also attached to the building. You know what I'm saying? So, that fills up pretty good, but they're also, like I said, more expensive. I'm humbled. I basically, I started this show back 14 years ago. And as time went on, I had some heart problems. I asked Mike to take over the day-to-day stuff. I still was always involved, but Mike handles most of the day-to-day stuff, and we're always talking to each other. At this time of year, it gets crazy, but it just like listen. I've given the information. Gus, you're speaking there this year. Before that, you guys have been there. I mean, you can probably tell the people, better what you think of the show than I can. I mean, to me, it's pandemonium, kind of like, Mike. I'm listen, people will see, they'll be talking to me, and I'm not trying to be rude, but I have a little earpiece in my ear. And, some guy backed up and hooked himself in the booth, or somebody was trying to kipe some baits out of a booth, or, some kid, a little child was lost, or one guy had too much to drink and starting to fight with a vendor. I mean, we try to keep everything in control, and we try to keep it peaceful on the floor. I mean, one year we had a guy having a heart attack. We've got a paramedic there that he can step right in, and we try to look, ahead of everything that could happen and make sure that we deal with things in a very expedient way, So it gets kind of crazy doing the show. So the only time I get to enjoy the show is at 7:00 in the morning when we open up the doors to, let the vendors in. And that's the only time I can actually look at the show. Otherwise, it's craziness. And you see that, Gus. Mike has seen that. It's just nuts. So I'm happy people enjoy it. We try to be different than every other show out there. And I don't know. Same thing with our speakers. I mean, there's so many younger people that want to learn. And one of the things I saw years ago, why this even started, why I started the Wisconsin Muskie Expo, is because I saw other speakers or people in the business that were what I would call television fishermen or magazine fishermen. And they were speaking every year after year at the same shows, including myself. I'm not a magazine dude, and I'm not a TV guy. I mean, I've been a YouTuber, but I know nothing about it. I just show up and they shoot the video and that's fine. But, I know nothing about how to even do that stuff. And, but the guys that we have speak at the show, I have confidence and I feel are going to give the people there a real seminar in order to teach them. I mean, Gus, I've been fishing with you and I've watched the way you approach a body of water, and you're doing a good job. I mean, I may call you guys kids, but my daughter's 41 years old. So to me, you are a kid. I mean, if my daughter would have ran out the window and got pregnant sooner, you could have been one of my grandsons or something. I don't know. It's just, my point of it is I see so many young people coming in, but you can best bet if a guy is speaking at that show, I respect what they're doing on the water. So on Friday, 3:00, Michael Hansen, the musky animal, is going to be speaking. That guy's crazy. I mean, he sleeps in a boat with a tarp over. He makes his dinner right in the boat. He never stops. He'll fish with people all day. Then he'll fish parts at night. He lives in his boat literally all season, and he puts a lot of big fish in the boat, fish that some of the old timers say don't exist anymore, but he seems to come up with the fish. Gus, you and Clayton, Speece are going to be, speaking, Friday afternoon. And then we got Todd Forcier, who's a longtime Pete and Well flowage guide. Saturday, we're going to open up with Fisher Smith. And I think a lot of people who knew Fisher is, I will tell you something about that kid.
Awesome.
That kid is a little animal.
Yeah, he's a fisherman. Is that his first time speaking?
Nope.
Or has he done
I've had him before. And
okay,
he's very articulate. He does a good job. For his age. But, I've heard people make comments, and cut him down. And he's just a kid. I'm going to tell you something. If I were into fishing muskie tournaments, I'd take that kid every time. The kid knows his stuff. He knows how to read his graph. He knows how to position a boat. He knows how to work his baits. And he's got the fish to back it up. I mean, the kid has caught a lot of fish in his short time of being on the water. And, so he deserves to be on that stage.
Awesome.
Myself, I'm going to speak this year at noon. Taylor Flannery, a lot of us are familiar with Taylor. He's another animal. The guy, He looks like a lumberjack, but he's got it together. I've been in the boat with him several times, and we get together and does a great job. Of course, at 4:00 on Saturday, Jeff Van Remortel. He don't think he needs any introduction. He'll be speaking. At Sunday, we got Bob Partika speaking at 10:00 in the morning. I'm going to tell you something about Bob. I don't think there's anybody that really knows Green Bay as far as the migration of fish and what those fish are doing than Bob does. He's very scientific. He puts a lot of time on the water. If you want to know something about Green Bay, he's a good one to listen to. Phil Stodola will be there. Kyle Hunsader, who makes the hunts, the Huntsy tails, the excellent bucktail. All these guys are from Green Bay. There's plenty of Green Bay boys that'll be there that you can talk with. I will point out something like Mike's, pedigree. We've got a guy coming from Canada. It's top line tackle, Adam Muller. He's bringing his dipsticks, and he's got a crankbait they use on Green Bay called the Nomad Shad. And that thing is bad to the bone. It's the same size as a Shad Rap, and wait till you see the action on this thing. And he also has got some pretty mean looking paint jobs, but he'll be there coming from Canada. At noon on Sunday, Brian Schaefer, and I think you guys all know who Brian Schaefer is.
Oh yeah.
He in himself is he's definitely a stick. He's one of Wisconsin's best. Nate Osfar, no introduction there. I mean, Nate Osfar and Merrill Lynch are kind of one of the same. I mean, when he talks muskies, people listen. And then we've got Brad Rue actually joining them on a panel, and they're going to be talking rubber on Sunday. And I don't think there's three guys. You couldn't pick three better guys to talk about rubber than those three.
Mm-hmm.
They've got it going on. Brad Rue is the manufacturer of Bulldogs, and Nate Osfar and Brian Schaefer have both been touted as some of the best rubber fishermen, in the business. So we've got a pretty good schedule of guys talking. Saturday night we've got a lure swap, and that's turned into a monster. A lot of guys come out for that. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's the same, but there's so much new on the floor this year, just different things that, every year you get a certain amount of people that, that are going to drop off. Maybe, they tried, making some baits and they didn't do as well because they didn't promote themselves. I mean, we let everybody know that the show's going on, but I think the bait makers need to let the people know that they're there, so they can check out all their new stuff, and some guys don't do that as well. So we don't have a lot of turnover, but every year there's a certain amount. And so companies like Top Line Tackle, come in. He's from Canada. He'll have his baits. Dozer spinner baits. A lot of guys have asked about Dozer spinner baits. He's going to be there this year.
There's another new one actually that I've been messaging with, the big action baits.
Oh, now remember, we were talking about baits that have gliders that have different action. This guy has a bait that works like a Bulldog or like a Medusa.
I'm actually really excited to see those.
Yes, big action baits is going to be there. His name's Brendan. Great guy. Very limited in baits. That's another bait you want to definitely, check out. They're just, like I said, there's a multitude of companies that are going to be there. Always is. I don't think we could put this year going right here. We can't do anymore. We're not going to make the show bigger, but we cannot cram any more vendors in this building, as we have this year. It is tight.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm seriously looking forward to it. What we're going to be, probably talking about it all the time leading up to it. I think between now and then, I'm going to be going to 2 more shows myself. And then actually this year, Wausau won't be the last one. Then there's one more in Waters Meet at the end of March. But this is what I would say is the bulk of show season. You, Mike, and others are, slaving away, getting the last bits and pieces of baits put together that you can. And everybody else is super hyped to buy.
Yep.
I mean, Facebook market's going nuts with people selling baits and stuff like that. Everyone's talking about the new stuff to get. So this was great to hear, and I'm really looking forward to it. And thank you for the opportunity for myself and Clayton to speak. We haven't landed on a topic yet. He's out of town right now, but we're going to get together here in the next few weeks and dial in something that we can really hammer down for our speaking, that I hope everybody enjoys. And great line of guests or for speakers. That's going to be awesome. I definitely advise people go in there after they make, if they're ones that have a list of baits to get and they get it done within an hour, instead of leaving, I would definitely go check out some of the speakers if you got the time.
They got time. Listen, if you look at my schedule, well, a lot of people, I think what's happening, I had a guy I talked to today or yesterday, and he was like, we're talking about podcasts, and well, I got this and that and this. I said, well, you know what? I know what it is to be busy. Okay. I handle, multiple estates for Finn's Braid. I do some work for some other companies, 5 other companies. Putting this show together is an awful lot of work. I hear people make the comment, I can do the same thing. My comment to them is have at her. because there's so much detail in putting on a show, not only for the people that come to the show, but even with the vendors. It's just a lot of work. And I welcome anybody that wants to try, because it's not that easy. And but we make sure we always, dot our I's and and cross our T's. Again, Max, are you going to be there this year?
Yeah, I'll be there Friday and Saturday.
Good. We'll see if we can't get you over to Mike's booth, to get yourself a pedigree before everybody else does. Okay. We'll get something worked out there. How's that?
As long as work allows it, I'll be there.
Yeah. Well, you just tell work they can wait. I had a guy tell me something here a few weeks ago. He said,
I'm
he's
1099, Rich. That doesn't work in my world. Sorry.
What?
Yeah.
You're what?
I'm 1099. That doesn't work in my world.
Me too, buddy. Me too. Let me tell you this. I had a guy tell me there's 2 holidays in Wisconsin. He said one is Christmas. He goes, and the second is the Wisconsin Musky Expo.
I'll make it work. I'll be there.
I thought that was kind of funny when I heard him
I
say
love
that.
it. I love it. I'll be there. My plan is to come after work on Friday, and then I'll be there Friday and Saturday. I'm gonna try to get there and watch Gus and Clayton speak, and hopefully we'll be able to do our maybe something with the Muskies on Tap podcast while we're there too. So I'm looking
Gus,
forward to it.
You made a comment. You said that you were thankful. You were appreciative. You deserve to be there, Gus. Max, last time we talked, I figured out why your brother's mind is so analytical. As we talked, he went to school to be an engineer. And that told me lots about Gus's mind, because he thinks about everything and wants everything to be just so. I think anybody that makes baits or musky fishes, that puts that much time on the water. This guy was on the water when the lakes were trying to freeze.
Well,
I
we
think
could
you're
have
a little
gone
bit on this.
longer, but
Huh?
we could have gone longer into December, but we chipped a 4-inch piece off of our prop, and I did not have a spare one. So
That was my bad.
once I saw that, maybe could have called around to get a
Hand up.
new one or
my
whatever.
fault.
No, I didn't give a fair warning on where the rocks were, but either way, I probably could have maybe found a prop somewhere. But when it was December 1st, we already had a banger last few days of catching some nice fish. I was like, all right, it's time to wrap it up. No more.
I think the last day I fished this year was November 20th. Actually, yeah, it was the 20th, because we were on the river, and we're running gliders low and slow, real slow, and it got into a stump, which is common when you're fishing the river, and so my partner went forward to get my glider off the stump, and kind of overshot it, and he hit the stump while I was standing on the edge of the boat on the back deck. Well, when he hit it, I'm getting older. My balance is not the best. So I ended up staggering. I ended up in the bottom of the floor, but it was the force going forward. So I ended up falling, and I caught the corner of the front deck. I hit my chest, and I ended up, the next day I had to go in for some surgery, on the other side of my chest. They were going to take a monitor out of my chest, and they knew that was real tender. Well, they found I had a hairline fracture, a couple bruised areas. I'm going to tell you, when you bust up your ribs, that hurts like mother. So,
Yeah.
I think my late November, early December days, are going to be limited here, because
That's fair. It's not easy on the
it's not
body or boat.
I think we're all on the
wallet.
spectrum a little bit, buddy.
Yes, this whole
Anybody
group
that
of
fishes
musky
muskies, we're
fishermen.
all sick in the head.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we're all
So-
nuts.
So I don't know.
Well,
That's kind of the rundown on the Wisconsin Musky Expo. It's March 14th through the 16th. Again, if they want to check with Econo Lodge, there are some Saturday night rooms if they want to spend the night.
Mhm.
It's Just tell them that we're with the Wisconsin Muskie Expo, and I think the vendors have as much fun at these shows as the people come in, because that's when it really gets going at night. Afterwards.
Yeah, party doesn't die. It's not just a
No,
show.
it's no.
Yeah.
They keep. Yeah, it's all about it. So
All
I don't know. So that's kind of what's going on.
Yeah, I'm
True.
super looking forward to it. We're gonna talk about it more in the future, but I think it's possibly getting to some people's bedtimes here. So, and I know you got a lot of work to do, Mike and whatnot. So, I really thank you guys for your time. Especially you, Mike. You could have been painting and whatnot. So, thank you for your time, and thank you, Rich, for coming on here as well to talk about the Wisconsin Muskie Expo. It just gets
Thank-
me fired up.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah,
For
always
sure.
enjoy coming on here with Gus. You allow it to flow freely. You don't put on any you know you don't nothing's fake about this. You talk about what's on your mind, and I love that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yep, that's kind of what we're trying to stand by at Muskies on Tap when we get guests, and just we literally start out most of the times with the guests. We're like, we don't have much of a game plan. We're gonna start from the start, and then wherever it takes us with either a story or how you work this or anything, it just goes, and we try to make it flow as best as possible. So, uh, yeah, I don't know if you got anything else to add, Max or Mike, Rich, anything to add or
Max, I'm
No,
always glad
thank-
to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate you guys coming on this evening. A lot of fun. So I'm headed to bed, gentlemen, but good to see you all, and I'll see you guys at the Wisconsin Muskie Expo Friday
That's
night.
right. You
All right.
betcha.
Take care. See you guys.
All right, thanks.
see everybody.